Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's Boston Region Vision Zero Action Plan Public Forum. Emily, I think you can go to the next slide. My name is Reagan Checchio, and I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's meeting. Next slide. So I do want to let everyone know that tonight's meeting is being recorded and it's going to be posted on the project website. Before we have our conversation together tonight and we answer your questions, I want to review a few technical aspects of the Zoom platform. So as you can see on screen, you can view closed captions by selecting from the options shown. Show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen. You can also view full transcript to display the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. All of our attendees are going to be muted during the presentation to prevent excessive background noise. If you're viewing the meeting on a computer, you can toggle the speaker view to see the presentation more promptly. And if you're on a smartphone, you swipe it to change your views. You'll see on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen that there is a Q&A button. We're going to ask that you use the Q&A button to submit a typed question or comment at any point during the meeting. We also do ask that you hold your substantive comments and questions until after the presentation is complete. We have an open chat tonight, but we actually ask that the questions be submitted through the Q&A feature so we can track them more easily. Your submitted questions are not going to be visible to the attendees once you submit that, but we are going to try to get to as many as possible during Q&A tonight. If you do have a technical problem at any point during the meeting, you can share your issue using the chat feature at any point. We will respond as quickly as we can. The chat is open and visible to everyone. So we encourage you to keep your comments in the chat respectful to other attendees. If you use inappropriate language, you will be removed from the meeting. And now, even to test out the chat, if you're interested, I would encourage everyone who wants to introduce themselves in the chat. Next slide. So this meeting tonight is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, as I mentioned before, you can share that in the Zoom chat box or contact us at visionzero@ctps.com. Next slide. So you are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at bostonmpo.org/MPO_non_discrimination. Thank you for your patience as I went through those instruction slides. And now I'm pleased to introduce Allie Kleiman from the Boston Region MPO, who will begin the main presentation. Allie?
Thanks, Reagan. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining tonight. My name is Allie Kleiman. I'm a principal transportation planner at the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization, and I've been managing the Vision Zero action plan work. I'm joined tonight by several members of our great consultant team that have been working with us throughout this project. Casey Woodley from Cambridge Systematics, Reagan, who introduced herself already, and Emily Farmer from Regina Villa Associates. So just a quick background on what the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, is and what we do in the Boston region. The MPO is the Regional Transportation Planning Agency for the region, and the region includes 97 cities and towns, stretching from Boston to Ipswich in the north, Marshfield in the south, and about I-495 in the west. The total area in the MPO is over 1,300 square miles and about 3 million residents. And the work of the MPO is guided by the 23 voting members of the board, made up of cities and towns in the region, Mass DOT, the MBTA, and the regional transit authorities. And the main work of the MPO includes studying transportation issues, funding transportation projects, and planning for the region's transportation, for the future of the region's transportation system. So we're here tonight because too many people are dying and getting seriously injured on our streets. And the Boston Region MPO is committed to working to change this. And we adopted a Vision Zero goal in our last long-range plan to start to work towards that. With funding from the federal Safe Streets and Roads for All program, for the past year, we've been developing this regional action plan to analyze the crash data, hear from stakeholders, and develop a plan to help us work towards making our streets safer. So we're here tonight to present the draft plan and officially kick off the public comment period and to hear from you any initial comments or questions on the plan. So this is what we plan to cover tonight. We'll talk about how we developed the plan. We'll give an overview of the safety data analysis that went into it, as well as what we heard from different stakeholder groups. We'll give you a sense of the strategies and actions in the draft plan. We'll talk about what comes next, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions. So that's a quick introduction to who we are and why we're here. Before we get into the presentation, we wanted to hear from you. We're talking about transportation safety tonight, which can be a pretty challenging topic, but we wanted to start this out with a positive question. So please tell us in the chat if you want to, what your favorite street is in the Boston region and what you like about it.
Allie, I'm seeing in the chat Lexington, a Pleasant Street in Lexington with a new roundabout. It makes it easier to use. I don't know if anyone else has any other favorite streets and why. Oh, Elliot is posting Start Lane in Jamaica Plain. It's cozy and safe, and that most people even walk in the street. Oh, Star Lane. Sorry, Elliot. Any other favorite streets and reasons why? Comm Ave in Newton, because of the carriage road. And Essex Street pedestrian walkway in Salem. Van Beacon Street's getting some love here in the chat, as is Comm Ave in Boston with the Green Mall in the middle. Shore Drive in Hull. I see the Little Lane down by the Bell in Hand, across from City Hall in Boston. History. Garden Street in Cambridge, one way with bike lane. Oh, Santiago, Chile, WIG, going international. Not in the Boston region, but definitely interesting. Salem Street, we're hearing. So, Allie, I think that gives a good some diversity here. Oh, we're getting Quincy, East Quantum Street, but you can see the city and the ocean and the plains. So the views.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. I mean, I think areas with greenery, natural views, safe for bikes and pets seems to be the theme. So I will hand it over to Casey to talk about some of the initial work we did and the process we followed.
Sure. Thank you, Ellie. And thank you to the MPO for allowing us to work with you and RVA on your development of this truly critical plan to help improve safety and health of our region's residents and visitors. Thank you. So the Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safety, health, equity mobility for all. First implemented in Sweden in the 1990s, Vision Zero has proved successful across Europe, and now it's gaining momentum in major American cities and metropolitan regions. Vision Zero acknowledges that many factors contribute to safe mobility, including roadway design, speeds, behaviors, technology, and policies, and sets clear goals to achieve the shared goal of zero fatalities and severe injuries. And if residents and travelers do not feel safe using active transportation, such as walking or rolling and biking, then they turn to motor vehicle use, further compromising our public health with increasing rates of sedentary diseases and higher carbon emissions. Next slide. So by adopting these approaches to safety, the MPO developed an aggressive and comprehensive process to develop the Boston Region Vision Zero Action Plan. Allie will talk about this a little more in detail, but at a high level, this process involved learning what we did when we looked at the data and listening. When we listen to our residents who feel unsafe and what they see as problematic. So the process involved 4 key steps. First, safety analysis. Our data analysis grounded the process and provided a data-driven focus on findings, problems, and solutions. We were able to identify a high injury network based on historical crash data, a high-risk network where we know there are safety threats even if multiple fatal and serious injury crashes have not yet occurred, and we gathered input from community members on where they feel the least safe. Next step was to engage the public and stakeholders. So at the heart of the process, our engagement shed light on diverse experiences and views. We conducted multiple surveys, met with numerous municipalities, and talked with people who are disproportionately affected by existing conditions in our roadway design and policy. We conducted a very in-depth policy and process analysis, investigating opportunities to transform existing policies or create new policies, such as automated enforcement opportunities around speeding and enforcement around school zones. We also looked at then identifying strategy, policy, and proven countermeasures to help create an action plan that would be able to make Boston region a safer place to walk, roll, cycle, and drive. I'll now turn the presentation over to Allie, who will provide more details regarding what we learned through this process.
Yeah, so I'm going to present some of the high-level findings from our safety analysis. Next slide. So first, it's useful to look at the long-term trends. If we look at the past 40 years or so, we see that since 1980, fatalities have decreased 68% from over 300 a year to current levels of over 100 a year in the region. Fatalities decreased sharply from 1980 to 2000 before decreasing at a slower pace over the past 20 to 25 years. And to get to today, what we see today in terms of roadway fatalities in the region. Next slide. Despite this long-term decrease, recent years actually show an alarming increase in both fatal and serious injury crashes in the region, with a 43% increase in fatal crashes and over a 10% increase in serious injury crashes. We're using 2018 to 2022 data here because 2022 is the most recent year of closed data from MassDOT and the RMV, but more recent years also show increases in serious crashes. So we're heading in the wrong direction. And we can also look at the data and see that there's a huge economic impact to the region from these crashes. Each fatal crash cost the region $19 million. And from 2018 to 2022, fatal and serious injury crashes cost the region over 12 billion. And all crashes, including minor injuries, cost the region over 26 billion. And we can look at the data by mode to see who's most impacted by serious crashes. So while people traveling outside of vehicles make up a small percentage of all crashes, they make up a disproportionately high amount of the most serious crashes, crashes where people are getting killed or seriously injured as a result. This graph shows the breakdown of injury severity by mode from 2018 to 2022. So in addition to this high-level picture of the impact of crashes, we can use the data to understand more about where crashes are happening. When looking at the subregional level, one thing that stands out is the rate of change from 2018 to 2022. So this map shows the percentage change in fatal and serious injury crashes. And you can see that crashes in the Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, North Suburban Planning Council, and South Shore Coalition all increased at varying rates. North Shore Task Force and Three Rivers Interlocal Council subregion showed decreases. In the Inner Core Committee, Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, and Metro West remained relatively constant. A common Vision Zero approach is to use crash and risk data to develop a high injury network in order to focus limited time and resources in the most problematic locations. So we've done this at 3 levels, the regional, subregional, and municipal. And we've identified the top 5% of roadways where the most serious and fatal injury crashes occur. And when we analyze the high injury network, it can help us understand more about where the problems are. We can see that a majority of the fatal and serious injury crashes in the region, 65%, occur on just 7% of roadway miles. We can understand the jurisdiction of the roadways where more serious crashes are happening. And finally, we see that the vast majority of the high injury roads are arterials, so our higher speed, multi-lane roads are where more problems are. And when we think about where high crash locations are, we also know that unsafe infrastructure isn't evenly distributed among our residents. As part of this work, we did a geographic analysis of injury crashes in the region and found that compared to the share of roadway miles, high injury roadways are disproportionately located in census tracts with high amounts of minority and low-income residents. So there are 2 other mapping parts to this work that you'll see in the draft plan. In order to further prioritize the high injury network, we took the information we found on the geographic distribution of crashes and the fact that more occur in traditionally underserved communities, and we combined that with vulnerable road user and vehicle volumes and priority destinations like transit stops, schools, and hospitals, and we developed a prioritized high injury network. So you can see an overview of that map here, and this will help us further prioritize corridors throughout the region and coordinate with municipalities about their priorities for the location of future safety projects. And then another key part of the analysis is looking at risk. So whereas the high injury network allows us to focus on locations where crashes have happened, the risk analysis can be a more proactive approach that focuses on locations that maybe don't have the crash history, but do have the roadway design or roadway user characteristics of streets that do have high crashes. So we can be proactive about improving safety in locations that have a high risk for crashes. And the main outcome of the risk analysis is a map to be able to understand the location of high-risk intersections and segments and to be able to align specific risk types with best practice interventions and, where possible, lower cost interventions that can be deployed across a number of similar types of high-risk sites. In addition to analyzing the detailed crash data for things like injury type and location, we can use it to focus in on crashes by various focus areas or emphasis areas. These emphasis areas are tied to federal transportation safety funding and are developed by state DOTs through crash data analysis to focus on areas, crash causes, and crash types that, if addressed, have the greatest potential to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries. So from analyzing crash patterns in the region, the MPO identified key crash causes that underpin 6 emphasis areas for the plan. These are the key crash causes and top issues involved in fatal and serious injury crashes in the region. So as you review the plan, you'll see that we use these emphasis areas to organize the strategies and actions in the plan to help us be clear about how we're working to address safety in each of these key areas. And we can analyze the crash data by emphasis area at the regional level. And there are several key takeaways when we do this. We see that intersection-related crashes are the most common type of fatal and serious injury crash, while lane departure crashes, that's when a vehicle crosses the center line or leaves the driving lane, only account for 4% of all crashes. They make up about 20% of fatal and serious injury crashes. Speeding-related crashes have seen a huge increase in the region over the past 5 years, and large vehicles were involved in 5% of fatal and serious injury crashes, impacting over 260 people. And most of the people killed or seriously injured in these crashes were in vehicles. 80% were either drivers or passengers, and 20% were vulnerable road users traveling outside of vehicles. All right, so transitioning to an overview of some of our stakeholder engagement. So stakeholder engagement will be an ongoing part of implementation of the Vision Zero Action Plan. And we wanted to highlight tonight the engagement we've done and the feedback we've received up to this point. We did 2 surveys, one for municipal staff and one for the public, and we got close to 800 responses from those. We had an online interactive map for people to enter safety concerns, and we received another 900 responses to that. We held roundtables and focus groups to try to reach stakeholders we may not normally hear from, like older adults, people with disabilities, the business community, and local law enforcement. And we held virtual office hours for municipal staff to ask questions about the data analysis. And we had 8 meetings with the Vision Zero Task Force focused on data, policy, stakeholder engagement, and strategy development for the plan. So the top 3 takeaways from all of our engagement were: there seems to be a general lack of trust among road users. Pedestrians worry about drivers not stopping, and drivers worry about other drivers being distracted or intoxicated. Roadway design is critical. People using all modes identified that current roadway designs often enable unsafe driving, making them feel unsafe. And there are some policy and funding gaps that could help us achieve this work. Policy stakeholders that we talked to highlighted the need for legislative changes, such as allowing more automated enforcement for speeding and red light running. And municipal stakeholders identified a lack of sufficient and flexible funding to implement comprehensive safety improvements. And through our public survey, we heard from residents of the Boston region and people traveling through the region. And the top 5 safety concerns we heard were speeding, distracted and aggressive driving, poor or missing sidewalks and bike lanes, unsafe road design, and drivers passing too closely. And then in the municipal staff survey, we heard from just under 40% of municipalities, and the top safety concerns related to infrastructure were poor and missing sidewalks and bike lanes, and related to driver behavior were speeding and distracted driving. All right, so that was a lot of information. We wanted to remind everyone what the data is telling us and what we're hearing from a broad range of stakeholders, because this input has directly shaped the draft action plan. So as we put together the action list, we were focused on defining actions for the MPO and actions for municipalities. For the MPO, we tried to think about what are the next steps that the MPO needs to take to move towards action plan implementation, and specifically, what are the next steps we can take to help municipalities move towards implementation. And for municipalities, we tried to think about what are the top 3 to 5 actions in each emphasis area that we want to encourage municipalities to take over the next 5 years or so to improve roadway safety. And once we had the draft list of actions, we shared it with the task force that we've been working with, and incorporated feedback from them. So overall, we ended up with 54 total actions in the plan, somewhat evenly split in terms of action lead, with the MPO leading 29 and municipalities leading 25. Every action was grouped into 3 main categories. Many at this stage are in the process category, so things like further data analysis, location prioritization, as well as continued outreach, education, and capacity building. And the remaining actions are split between policies and infrastructure changes. And then when you review the plan, you'll see there are 4 timeframes for implementation, with the majority of actions falling into the short and medium term timeframes, so within the first 5 years of the plan. 4 actions that we're saying are more long-term at this point, and 7 that we grouped as ongoing, so actions that would be done on some sort of recurring schedule. So I'm just going to give an overview of some actions that directly address the top concerns we heard from municipal staff and residents. For each area, I'm going to highlight some actions that will be led by municipalities, some that would be led by the MPO, and I'll try to give a sense of what falls into the infrastructure category versus policy or process. So to address the concerns we heard about speeding, there are 4 actions that I wanted to highlight. 3 would be led by municipalities and 1 would be led by the MPO. The 3 municipal actions include 1 infrastructure action and 2 policy actions. The infrastructure action is to prioritize traffic calming street design changes on local and collector streets in areas at high risk for speeding related crashes, such as residential neighborhoods, school zones, and commercial areas. And the policy actions are to lower speed limits. And there are 2 approaches to this, either adopting the 25 mile per hour speed limit on municipal owned roads in high density areas, or establishing safety zones and school zones to further lower the speed limit to 20 miles per hour in areas with high volumes of vulnerable road users. The Boston MPO action related to speed is to expand guidance and provide resources for municipalities to perform speed data collection more effectively, enabling data-driven identification of hotspots and evaluation of countermeasure effectiveness. There are 3 actions to highlight that can help us address distracted and aggressive driving. 2 of these would be led by municipalities and 1 would be led by the MPO. The municipal-led actions include an infrastructure action. This is to install pavement markings and physical delineation near crosswalks and intersections to improve sight lines. This is sometimes called daylighting intersections. And a policy action to adopt a safe fleet policy that outlines municipal fleet owners' commitment to safer vehicles with higher direct vision. And the MPO-led action is a process action. and is to plan and host peer exchanges to share best practices and problem solving with municipal planners, departments of public works, law enforcement, elected officials, school leaders, and first responders. And then finally, I wanted to highlight 3 actions that can help us address unsafe infrastructure in the region. So we all know it's construction season, and there's a lot of good work going on around the region by municipalities and MassDOT to slow drivers, improve safety for pedestrians, and improve transit accessibility. These actions in the plan are meant to keep this momentum and serve as a guide for municipalities and the MPO as we work to reduce fatal and serious crashes. So of the 3 actions, there are 2 that would be led by municipalities. An infrastructure action to improve the safety and visibility of mid-block crosswalks with the installation of signage, high visibility pavement markings, rapid rectangular flashing beacons, or other signals along high-speed corridors and near priority destinations. And a policy action to develop a policy requiring traffic control guidance and design to improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists traveling through municipal project work zones. And then one action that would be led by the MPO, and it's a process action to create a tool kit of engineering countermeasures, including typical dimensions and specifications for standard drawings, for local best practices for traffic calming. And then in addition to the strategies and actions to guide implementation of this plan, there's also information and links to funding sources, both state sources through MassDOT, DCR, and the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, as well as federal programs through USDOT. So we were going to pause again at this point. I've been talking for a long time, and if people have thoughts about safety improvements that you've seen in your communities or elsewhere that you think have been successful and could potentially be duplicated in other areas, I think you can.
I think Wake has his hand up. Let me unmute you, Wake.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I was a couple minutes late. I had a quarterly Massport Oversight Committee meeting. I have not flown for 30 years except to go to conferences that I really need to be at in person. And one every year is the International Society of Environmental Epidemiology, which happened to be in Santiago, Chile last late summer. And I always stay away from the conference. So I'm walking through the cities for at least a couple miles each way every day. I have never seen as clear signals in a city as I saw in Santiago. Now, this was the core of the city, so it may not be the same in the rest of it. But the lights on the main streets equally applied to road traffic, to bicyclists and pedestrians. And the lane paintings, the paintings that denoted those, for example, bike lanes and stuff on the main streets were uniform throughout that whole section of the city. I really was stunned at the benefit. Some of this is because they probably just redid this. It's a city with a long history, some ups and downs. So I'll stop there. But it was remarkable to me. I didn't need to use the high-speed transit, but I did go down into the stations. They were similarly really exceptionally well done with regard to clarity of different kinds of riders and the cleanliness of the stations and that kind of thing. So if anybody does, and it's especially important in our context because we have so many different cities and towns, and they tend to adapt different protocols, and they may be sensible in each small context, but the benefit of having a uniform and really clear protocols across a metro area was really apparent. And then the last thing is just totally different. It was nice to be able to see 24,000 foot high mountains as you were walking around the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Wake. Allie, there are also some comments in the chat. We see some direct vision standard for large vehicles, suggestion from Elliot, bump out crosswalks from Ed, and it's got a thumbs up for that one. I think Kash is talking a little bit more about tinted asphalt for bike paths instead of paint, similar to what Holland does. That got a thumbs up as well. And Janet is suggesting flashing lights when multi-use trails cross main streets. And then there's Ed also is talking about the new rotaries, how they work as traffic calming measures. And we have a few folks with their hands up. Do we have enough time to get to everyone here, Allie? Or do you want to keep going? The presentation.
I think we can, yeah, take a couple more people.
Okay. Dominic, you should be able to speak.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
One thing that I've liked that the city of Boston has done is they've come up with a criteria for where they can put speed humps on their streets. And they actually have a little map they've made in GIS showing every single street in the city on, will you have speed bumps here or not? And then, have they already installed them? I think it's a pretty good systemic way to add this traffic calming feature across an entire city or town.
Thanks so much, Dominic. And Zeke, you should be able to speak.
Hi, thank you, everyone. This has been really informative. So I'm wondering if things like trapezoidal delineator panels for things like taking into account blind and visually impaired pedestrians. Again, trapezoidal delineator panels, bumps when marking, different, whether it's ped or bike, that difference in making it, how Vision Zero factors into planning for, vulnerable users who happen to be blind or visually impaired. It would be great to, maybe have guidance or, general thoughts on like what materials in mitigations might be good or bad, and just essentially having something that compensates for blind and visually impaired users within Vision Zero methodology. Thank you.
Hey, Casey's giving you a thumbs up, Zeke. So thank you for your comment. Allie?
Yeah, thanks, Zeke and Wig and Dominic. Yeah, these are all things that, we've heard in other engagement and either heard in other engagement or, talked about internally as we've been developing the plan, and are things that, as we start to think about implementation, we want to continue engagement with municipalities to hear, these specifics about what would be helpful guidance and research that we could do as we develop toolkits or model traffic calming prioritization approaches, all those types of things. So thank you. Yeah, if there are other thoughts as we go through the few remaining slides, feel free to keep adding to the chat. But thank you, everyone.
Okay, so Zeke, I'm going to follow up with you separately as someone who's newly partially visually impaired. So I'm looking forward to those discussions. But while we've achieved a major milestone through the development of this comprehensive safety action plan, it really is just the beginning of our pursuit towards zero fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. So the success of our collective efforts relies upon frequent communication, collaboration, and action. So going forward, The MPO will continue to work with municipalities to implement proven safety countermeasures, which are identified throughout the plan and specifically in one of the appendices. Adopt key policies, whether at the state or local level, leveraging funding opportunities such as pursuing more SS4A grants or your own SS4A grants at a municipality level, and continue to engage and collaborate with the MPO, but also with other municipalities. This is through sharing best practices. And I encourage you to review other safety action plans in the region. So we have some in Somerville, Cambridge, Boston, many other municipalities throughout the region have their own safety action plans. Next slide. Thank you. So the Boston Region MPO is responsible for executing this action plan, and they will do so through multiple things, including coordination with state and municipal stakeholders, such as through peer exchanges and regular communication. The peer exchanges we heard repeatedly through our interviews and workshops that law enforcement and planning and DPW staffs really wanted a more frequent and structured process for being able to exchange ideas. Include safe system principles in all of their planning processes, prioritizing safety investments and helping to identify funding sources for municipal treatments, educating the public on their role in a safe systems approach, encouraging responsible behaviors, and identifying resources for vulnerable populations. The MPO will also evaluate progress toward completion of plan action steps, track performance metrics, and continually analyze crash trends and emerging risks. And lastly, the MPO will advocate at all levels of government for policies and processes that enhance roadway safety. For next steps, Allie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Next slide. Yeah, so what comes next? We want to work with you and your communities, and we want to hear from you. So please visit the website, bostonmpo.org/vision zero. I think Emily is going to put some links in the chat. So when you go to that website, the plan is posted there, as well as an executive summary and translated versions of the executive summary. There's also an interactive map, and the link to that now should be working. That includes crash data, high priority network, and risk data. So you can zoom into a specific community and see that detailed data. We're planning community engagement this summer, and we'll update the website with those dates and locations. But please be in touch. Let us know what you think of the plan and the strategies. Does it capture what you know to be transportation safety concerns in your community? You can email us at either the vision0@ctps.org email address, or you can reach out to me directly. My email will be on the next slide. And you can sign up for the MPO's emails to keep in touch. And I just want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, taking the time out of your busy summer schedules. We appreciate your partnership and expertise as we continue with this work. And before we get into the Q&A and discussion, are there any elected officials or the Regional Vision Zero Task Force members present who would like to either ask questions or make comments? Dan?
Dan, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Dan Albert. I live in Marblehead. I'm on the task force. And I wanted to call attention to, and it's in the document that's been shared with everybody, but especially for people that are kind of coming to this new the bottom line with this really is a paradigm shift in the way we think about our road and mobility environment, from the movement of traffic to the movement of people, and the way we even think about accidents. We don't call them accidents anymore. Allie, you wouldn't have heard use that word. People talk about crashes and collisions. And the reason for that is these are preventable. We know that they're preventable. So it's really all about a changing paradigm and a changing mindset. They're not accidents, they're crashes. Mobility should be safe, equitable, and sustainable for everybody. And I think as long as you have that fundamental philosophical shift in the frame of mind as a town employee or an elected official or an advocate for this sort of thing, I think everything you do going forward will contribute to this. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That is a really important point to bring out.
So I think, Allie, if you're ready to open it up for Q&A, I can give some instructions to folks, if that works.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll come up video. Everyone, I think we've already been practicing with this, but if you would like to share a comment or ask a question, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We're going to prioritize answering questions, but also note that if you just want to submit comments too, we'll include that in the final meeting summary. If you're joining by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing star number 9, and we'll accept your comments verbally. So I'll start. There's 2 questions already in the Q&A, Allie, that I will read the first one. It is, from Elliot, are there any aspects of the plan aimed at changing our culture to be more accepting of systemic safety or more aligned with the goal of Vision Zero?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work for the MPO going forward and a lot of the benefit that we can bring in this work is that type of education, engagement, sort of marketing, providing, whether we're sharing that information ourselves when we do our own engagement or making those materials and resources available to cities and towns for their work. So I agree, that's a huge part of it.
Great. Ed asked, how do you get the local police to accept the townwide 25 miles per hour? They think it puts more responsibility on their traffic management, and the town meeting approved the change in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, one of the focus groups I mentioned or roundtable discussions that we had as part of our engagement for this developing the plan was actually a local law enforcement roundtable. I think we got about 5 local police officers. So not a huge turnout, but also sort of a group that is, typically not engaged in these discussions and can be harder to reach. So we had a a good discussion with them, and I think it was just the first step in engaging that group in this work. And actually, it was one of the police officers on that call who brought up having an interest in sort of ongoing peer exchanges. There's talk, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, in terms of like traffic calming, vertical traffic calming, speed humps, and the impact on emergency response and fire and police and how that's handled. And there was discussion around the fact that some municipalities like Somerville and others have been able to do that successfully and have gotten, have had that coordination with fire and police and sort of, whether those types of peer learning can play a role in helping have those discussions and help municipal staff at different levels learn how to implement those things and have those discussions.
Thanks, Allie. John had a question. What factors contribute to the $19 million cost for each fatal accident?
I was worried someone was going to ask me that question. That it is actually it's a methodology that MassDOT follows and has on their website. Casey, I don't know if you have any other specifics on it, but we can share that with the.
We can share that with everyone. It was based on some MassDOT analysis and kind of standards around crash costs in general from industries like the insurance industry and NHTSA, et cetera.
Yeah, my understanding is that it takes into account things like care, everything from sort of care in the hospital to lost work time.
It does, yep.
Yeah,
Lost benefits, et cetera.
yeah. Did you have a comment on that, Wig?
You should be able to speak, Mike, now.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I just wanted to mention that often what really factors in to any accident with a fatality is the value of a statistical life. So for decades, based on the work of Kip Viscusi, the value of a statistical life was set at $10 million, regardless of how many years of life were lost. And so that's one thing that's a pretty big issue in that. I wanted to also mention something that's on the much smaller side. Some of the new bump outs that are used for bus stops and things like that are really hard to see, especially in times of day that are moving from daylight to evening. And it might be worth thinking, maybe with a small group, whether there might be a standard color that could be applied to those curves that are actually bump outs from the normal pattern. I hit one at Twin City that appeared really quickly and just blew my tire on it. I wasn't speeding, but I just didn't notice it had been put in overnight and it didn't have any paint on it. No one got hurt, just needed a new tire, but just a thought, because as you get fancier with the bump outs and the changes in the road, the road plan, I think that's visibility is an issue because people have things on their minds. So making it easier for them to see what you're doing helps everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Good points.
Right. Allie, there aren't any questions in the Q&A right now. I don't know if anyone else has any further remarks they want to make. I might suggest that Emily relink the plan. Yep, she's already on it in the chat for everyone. And I see that Dan also replied to the question about crash data by town, and that's the map that we shared the link with earlier as well.
Yeah, MassDOT's impact website is very good for crash data by town. If you look at the tool on our website, you can also, we're still building it out at this point. It's more about seeing the high priority network and the crashes. And you can also filter to the town level.
And Allie, John we have one more question in the Q&A about a little bit more explanation of the methodology for the high-risk network. I don't know if that's you or Casey to explain.
Yeah, the high risk network. So we actually, MassDOT has also done a lot of work on that. They have that mapped on their websites as well. And we decided to use their methodology for that and just bring it into our own map so it's easier to, focus on the region. Um, but it considers they have, yeah, maybe someone can put in the chat, but they have methodologies for all the risks on their website explained, and it considers things like design of the road and land use, things like that.
And I would just add that the MassDOT impact tool has evolved exponentially. It's a great tool. You can learn so much from it. And there are lots of people in Mass DOT, including Bonnie Poland, who will be happy to answer any questions you have if you get in there and start questioning data or where it's from, or, so I encourage everyone to take a look at the data. And if you have questions, reach out to them or to us so we can kind of answer some questions for you and get you headed in the right direction.
Thank you both. And Dan has his hand up. So Dan, you should be able to unmute now.
Yeah, I just want, if I just wanted to follow up on that and tell people if they're interested in looking either at the Vision Zero data set or the crash data portal, you can then also go to your local police, email them, whatever, and get those crash reports. And I think that's something important to do, particularly in smaller towns. I've done a lot of that here in Marblehead, and to try to ground truth the crash data portal with what your local community or your local police are saying. And I mentioned that specifically because somebody was saying, hey, we adopted the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, and our local police are not being helpful. I don't know what town that was, but as important as it is to be active and engaged with the MPO and with all of this stuff, the MPO really needs people on the ground who, and I'm not speaking for the MPO, I just feel that you can go to your local police and you can get this kind of local information to double check it. So that's all.
You can tell it's later in the evening that I can't figure out how to unmute myself. Are there any final questions for the evening? I will say it's been a great conversation tonight. Wake's giving me a thumbs up. So, is that a question, Wake, or that you're good? No, you're good. All right. Allie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, thanks again, everyone, for taking the time to join and be part of this conversation tonight. And, we have your contact information now, so we know where to reach you all, and we'll continue our engagement. I think that's a key part of this next step, is continuing to coordinate with the state and municipalities and figure out how to implement the Vision Zero action plan.